guy ought to have a partner, and he's so, there's just no one like him.
He's really unique. He was here yesterday.
Yeah.
And he's been here a bunch, and I really love him because I just can't predict what he's gonna say now.
Or how he's gonna say it.
Yeah.
Like how he's gonna say it. And I think
Meg Ryan is opening up about the pain of losing her close friend and longtime collaborator, Rob Reiner, and it's heavier than anyone imagined. The rain was pounding hard over Montecito when a sleek black car stopped before the towering iron gates. It wasn't the kind of storm that washed things away. It was the kind that pressed the sky down low, making the air feel thick and unshakable. For nearly 3 weeks, the world had been spinning out of control, flashing headlines, breaking news alerts, talk shows looping that eerie clip of an ambulance pulling out of a Brentwood driveway. But inside her quiet home, Meg Ryan sat still, surrounded by silence so deep it almost felt alive. No calls, no texts, no posts, nothing. Paparazzi had spotted her here and there, walking her dog, face half hidden behind dark, oversized shades, but they had no clue what she was really carrying inside. People guessed heartbreak, guilt, maybe even regret, but the truth? It went much deeper than anyone thought. For a whole decade, Meg had been holding on to something buried deep, a secret that had been eating away at her since the day that story blew up. And that secret started with Rob Reiner, the man she didn't just admire as a director, but loved like family. Years ago, during one quiet, vulnerable moment, Rob had whispered something to her, a truth so heavy she'd tried to wipe it from her mind forever. But now, sitting down in that tall velvet chair, under dimmed studio lights that stripped away every ounce of Hollywood glam, Meg couldn't hide anymore. The moment had finally come to face what she'd been running from all this time. It was Rob's golden era, those unforgettable years when everything he touched turned to magic. Back in the late 80s, Meg Ryan was pure light, the face of every dream, every romantic comedy, the woman who made love stories feel real. But now? She looked like someone who'd watched her whole world crumble right in front of her eyes. Her hands wrapped tightly around a ceramic mug, not to drink, but to steal a little warmth, trying to stop the shaking that came from deep inside her bones. Slowly, she lifted her head. Her blue eyes still had that spark, but they were rimmed with red from too many sleepless nights. No smile, no charm, no movie star shine, just raw truth. On her feed, she had posted a black and white photo of them dancing, smiling, alive. Her caption read softly, "Oh, how we will miss this man. Thank you, Rob and Michelle, for believing in love, in fairy tales, and in laughter." Then came the words that made everyone lean in closer. "I need to say this," she began, her voice rough, stripped of that sweet tone the world once adored. "Because if I don't, if I keep pretending that perfect Hollywood family still exists, then I'm part of what happened to him." Her voice cracked, trembling as she forced out the next line, "I'm part of the lie that broke him." Her chest rose sharply as she tried to steady her breath. The room fell silent. Everyone thought they knew Rob Reiner, the baseball cap, the big laugh, the beard that framed his grin. They knew The Princess Bride, Stand By Me, those feel-good classics that made the world seem brighter. But what they didn't see was the storm brewing behind those closed doors, the side of Rob no one ever talked about. On the quiet days when the cameras stopped rolling, no one saw the storm brewing behind the scenes, the tension between Michelle and Rob that had been growing for years, thick and invisible like fog you could almost touch. Meg sat still, her eyes drifting toward the rain-streaked window, her thoughts slipping deep into the past. "You have to understand," she whispered, her voice barely holding steady. "Rob wasn't just a director to me. When Harry Met Sally wrapped, he didn't just shake her hand and move on to another hit, no. Rob and Michelle pulled her in close, made her part of their world. They treated her like family, and for Meg, that meant everything. To her, they were proof that real love could survive even in the glitter and illusion of Hollywood. But then something shifted about 5 years ago. The light around them dimmed. She remembered one night so clearly, just a simple Tuesday dinner at their house. No red carpets, no cameras, no pretending. But the second she walked through that front door, she felt it. The air was heavy, charged, like the ghost of a fight still hanging in the room. This wasn't just a couple's spat, it was colder than that, quieter, like something deep beneath their perfect image had cracked wide open. The memory made Meg's fingers tighten around her mug until she finally set it down with a sharp click that echoed through the silence. "Nick was there," she said carefully, her voice low, controlled. "And I want to be clear how I say this. I know he's facing serious charges, and I know he's their son, but the Nick I saw that night wasn't the same kid I'd watched grow up." Her eyes hardened as she said it, the kind of look that told you there was way more to that night than anyone had ever dared to say. Meg's eyes darkened as the memory hit her sharp, painful, impossible to shake. "There was something missing in him," she said quietly. His eyes were just blank, cold, like the light inside him had gone out. The thought made her shiver, her fingers trembling as she tried to steady herself. "It scared me," she whispered. They'd all been sitting around the dinner table, pretending everything was fine, trying to hold on to some sense of normal. Rob, sweet, gentle Rob, had tried to keep the peace, cracking one of his usual goofy dad jokes about the pasta, just trying to get everyone to smile.
And as a director, you have to really micromanage. So I kind of, every time they said action, I was like, all right, I can just kind of relax a little bit.
But the kind that freezes you in place. The kind born from fear. Meg's voice lowered to almost a whisper as she leaned forward, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles turned pale. "I have to believe," she said, her words shaking, "that their story doesn't have to end with this tragedy, that something good can still come out of it, maybe awareness, maybe understanding, something human, something kind." Her voice cracked slightly, but she kept going. "I think that's what they would want for all of this to mean something more, to bring us closer, not tear us apart." She took a long, trembling breath. "That moment still haunts me," Meg confessed, her eyes flickering with pain. "I looked at Michelle." She paused, her tone softening. Michelle, always the strong one, the calm in every storm. But that night she didn't yell, she didn't tell him to stop, she just flinched. The word hung in the air like a wound that never quite healed quiet, but it said everything. Meg swallowed hard, her throat tight as the memory replayed like a movie she wished she could turn off. She looked down at her plate that night and whispered, "I'm sorry, Nick." Even now, those words still hung in the air, heavy, haunting. Her eyes shimmered as she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Then I looked at Rob, and what I saw in his eyes that night, I'll never forget it. Her voice caught for a moment. "It wasn't anger," she said slowly. "It was fear, real fear. The kind that freezes your blood and steals your breath." She paused, visibly shaken, her hand gripping her arm as if to steady herself. He looked at me for just a second, just one, and in that glance, his eyes were begging me not to say a word, begging me to keep pretending. Her voice trembled, but stayed strong enough to carry the weight of it. "So I did," she confessed. Meg's words grew softer. "I sat there, ate the pasta, sipped the wine, smiled when I had to, all while my heart was pounding like a trapped bird trying to break free." She took a shaky breath, remembering the urge to run, the dread building in her chest. "I left early that night," she said. "Rob walked me to the car, and when he hugged me, he held on too tight. He didn't want to let go." Her voice broke when she recalled his final words that evening. He whispered, "He's just going through a rough patch, Meg. We just have to love him through it. Love fixes everything." Her eyes glistened as she shook her head slowly. "That was Rob's biggest mistake," she murmured. "He really believed that love could fix anything, that love was armor strong enough to protect his family from everything waiting to break them." The pain in her voice said the rest love, no matter how strong, hadn't been enough. But to someone like Nick lost in that fragile, unstable state, love wasn't a shield anymore. It twisted into something darker, something he could bend to his own breaking point. What Meg was sharing wasn't about one explosive night, it was about a slow, painful unraveling that crept in quietly while everyone was too afraid to admit what was really happening. She said that over the last year, something in Rob had changed. The man who once called her full of fire, ideas, and laughter had started sounding empty, like the spark that drove him for decades had dimmed. "He used to call me just to talk about work," Meg said softly, her voice cracking as a tear slipped down her cheek. "The next project, the next scene, the next crazy idea he couldn't wait to shoot." But then, the calls got shorter and rarer. When he did call, he sounded hollow, almost like a stranger. Rob Reiner, the man who lived for cinema, stopped talking about movies, she whispered, shaking her head. That's when I knew something was really wrong. Her breath hitched as she remembered. He started asking strange questions out of nowhere, things like, "Do you have a security system you trust, Meg?" Or, "Do you think people can really change?" Her voice trembled. It broke my heart because he sounded like someone who didn't feel safe in his own home. Then Meg revealed what few had ever known, that Rob and Michelle had started quietly shifting things around. They began selling off properties, liquidating assets, moving money as if trying to prepare for something they couldn't stop. The change wasn't random, it was careful, calculated, desperate even. Meg and Rob's connection ran deep decades of collaboration and friendship. They had worked together on the legendary When Harry Met Sally back in 1989, and later again in the 1993 romance Sleepless in Seattle. Their bond wasn't just professional, it was personal, which made watching him fade like that feel all the more heartbreaking. Rob Reiner was 78, a Hollywood legend whose loss hit the world like a punch to the chest. Aaron Sorkin mentioned bits of it once, Meg said quietly, her voice trembling, but even he didn't know how deep it really went. She paused, swallowing hard before continuing. I found out later that Rob and Michelle had been paying off Nick's debts. Her tone grew heavy, the disbelief clear in her eyes. And these weren't just credit card bills or late payments, these were debts owed to people you never want to owe anything to. They had tried everything to save him again and again, thinking maybe if they just wrote one more check, pulled one more string, did one more favor, the chaos would finally stop. They thought money could fix it, she said, her voice soft, breaking under the weight of it. They believed love and sacrifice could save him. Her eyes fell to the floor, her hands clenched in her lap. The day it hit the news, Meg said slowly, I was in New York, sitting in a taxi. Her voice grew faint, distant, like she was still trapped in that moment. My phone started buzzing, not ringing, just buzzing nonstop. The screen kept lighting up, message after message, like the world was trying to tell me something I didn't want to hear. She drew in a deep, shaky breath. Then I saw a message from Billy Crystal. She continued, her eyes glistening. Just 3 words. They're gone, Meg. Her lips trembled. At first, I didn't understand gone where? A trip? A break? She blinked, remembering how her chest tightened as she opened the link. And then, I saw it. The aerial footage of the Brentwood house, the flashing lights, the yellow tape. Her voice cracked, almost disappearing. And suddenly I couldn't breathe. It felt like someone had crushed the air right out of me. Her tone dropped to a whisper. Because deep down in the darkest corner of my gut, I wasn't surprised. Tears welled in her eyes as she confessed that truth, the kind that no one ever wants to admit out loud. That's the part I have to live with, Meg said, her voice shaking but steady enough to slice through the silence. I was heartbroken. I was shattered. But I wasn't shocked. Her words hung in the air like a confession she'd been holding in for years. The truth is, I knew. I knew that the version of Nick I saw at that dinner table 5 years ago, the one with those cold, empty eyes, had finally taken over. She stopped talking for a long moment, trying to pull herself together. The studio stayed completely silent. A producer nearby reached out, offering her a tissue, but she gently waved it away. No, she whispered, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. This needs to stay real. Then she lifted her head and looked straight into the camera, her expression raw, unfiltered, and heartbreakingly honest. The media keeps calling it a sudden breakdown, she said firmly. They're talking about mental health, about stress, and sure, maybe some of that's true. But what no one's really talking about is the manipulation, the control, the way love and guilt got twisted into a trap none of them could escape. Her tone hardened with grief and conviction. Rob and Michelle were trapped, she said. They were living under coercive control in their own home. Their freedom, their peace, everything that made them who they were. It was slipping away right in front of them. Her words cracked with both fury and sorrow. She looked down, took a slow breath, then continued softly. About 3 months ago, I tried to visit. I was in LA, and something just told me to stop by. It was this gut feeling like I had to see them. She paused. When I got there, the gate was shut tight. I buzzed, and Michelle answered. Her breath hitched slightly before she spoke. but her voice, it didn't sound like her. Meg's expression darkened. It was flat, robotic, almost rehearsed like she was reading a line someone else had written for her. The weight of that moment filled the room, proof that something far more sinister had been brewing behind those gates. She said, "Meg, we love you, but today isn't a good day." Meg's voice wavered, her eyes glassy as she replayed the memory. And right then, I heard shouting in the background, then glass breaking. Her hand trembled as she spoke, the sound still echoing in her mind. And I drove away. I drove away because I wanted to respect their space, because I didn't want to embarrass them. Her voice cracked. And that's something I'll carry with me forever. The pain in her tone turned sharp, frustration spilling out like she couldn't hold it back any longer. "I should have done something," she said, almost to herself. "I should have called for help. I should have driven straight through that gate if that's what it took." She took a shaky breath, her anger aimed as much at herself as at the world around her. But this polite world we live in, it teaches us to look away, to mind our own business. And that silence cost everything. The air in the studio shifted heavier, darker. Even the lights seemed to dim. Meg hesitated, glancing down before revealing what came next. 2 days before it all happened, she said softly. Rob called me. It was 3 a.m. Her voice grew faint. He sounded calm, too calm. The kind of calm that doesn't feel right. Her eyes shimmered with tears. He said, "Meg, I just wanted to hear your voice. I wanted to remember your laugh." She paused, swallowing hard. I asked him what was wrong, and he said, her voice dropped to a whisper, "I think we made a mistake, honey. I think we loved too much and protected too little." The room went completely still, no one even breathed. Then she added, her words trembling, "He told me something that made my stomach twist. He said Nick had been demanding the deed to the house. He thought Rob was hiding money from him." Meg's voice faded into silence, the kind that said everything words couldn't. The truth was uglier, deeper, and far more tragic than anyone had imagined. Meg swallowed hard, her breath shaky, before continuing. "And then Rob said something that almost gave me hope," she whispered. "I told him no," he said. "For the first time tonight, I told him no." Her voice cracked as she tried to smile through the tears. "I remember telling him, 'Good for you, Rob. You have to draw a line.'" For a brief moment, she had believed things were finally turning around, that maybe he was taking his power back. But then her face darkened, the hope in her tone fading fast. "I didn't know," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I didn't know that drawing that line would be the thing that cost him everything." Her hands tightened into fists on her lap, her nails digging into her palms as she stared straight ahead, her eyes sharp, burning with both anger and grief. "I keep hearing people talk about the trial," she continued, her tone rising with each word. "They talk about defense strategies, diminished capacity, excuses for Nick." She paused, her jaw tightening. "Let me tell you something." The room went completely quiet, every ear locked on her next words. Her tone cut through the silence like glass. "The Nick Reiner I saw knew exactly what he was doing." Her voice grew stronger, fiercer. He knew which buttons to press. He knew that if he cried, Michelle would soften. He knew that if he even hinted at hurting himself, Rob would give in and reach for the checkbook. Her expression hardened, her eyes cold but steady. "He turned their love into his weapon," she said flatly. "He took the best parts of them, their kindness, their empathy, and twisted them into control." Meg's voice dropped lower, filled with disgust and heartbreak. "That's not confusion," she said. "That's not chaos." Her words hung heavy in the room, raw, direct, impossible to look away from. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was a warning about how love, when manipulated, can destroy everything. "That's calculation," Meg said, her tone sharp and unflinching. "That's cruelty." Her words cut through the still air like a knife. It was a deliberate, cold exploitation of two parents who loved too much. Her breath caught as she began pacing across the small Persian rug in the center of the studio. Outside, the rain beat harder against the glass, each drop slapping the window like a heartbeat, echoing her anger. "And when that love finally didn't give him what he wanted," she said, her voice shaking with fury, When the endless flow of money and forgiveness stopped, he broke the very people who had built their lives around him. She stopped, her eyes glassy but her tone unwavering. Rob Reiner gave the world The Princess Bride. He gave us the words, "As you wish." He made people believe that true love could conquer anything. She took a trembling breath, her voice cracking with emotion. And the cruelest part, the heartbreaking twist, is that his own true love for his son, that same boundless, forgiving love, is what led him straight into tragedy. Her words hit like thunder, heavy, painful, impossible to ignore. Meg's tone softened, though the edge never left. It wasn't a lack of love that ended their story, she said quietly, her voice raw. It was too much of it. Her eyes shimmered with tears that refused to fall. A love that didn't have limits. A love that couldn't say no. A love so blinding it couldn't see the danger standing right in front of it. She turned slowly back to the camera, her face bare, no makeup, no Hollywood mask, no filter. Just truth. "That's what love can do," she whispered, her voice trembling but strong. "It can save you, or it can destroy you. And for Rob, it did both." The rain outside roared louder, like the sky itself was mourning with her. Her voice trembled, but every word hit with the weight of truth. "I'm speaking now because I want justice," Meg said firmly, her tone cutting through the silence like a blade. "Not just the kind handed down in a courtroom, though I pray Nick never walks free again, but justice for their legacy." Her eyes burned with emotion. "I don't want Rob remembered as just another tragic headline. I want him remembered as a man who fought a man who tried so hard to save his son that he lost himself in the process." Her voice strengthened as she leaned forward, her expression fierce. "We have to learn something from this," she said, her tone sharp with conviction. "We've got to stop glorifying this idea of the self-sacrificing parent, the ones who give and give until there's nothing left of them." She took a deep, shaky breath, her hands trembling slightly. Because if you're in a situation where your own child is hurting you, where you feel scared in your own home, love isn't enough. You have to choose survival. Her words hung in the air, heavy and honest. "Rob and Michelle didn't choose survival," she said softly, shaking her head. "And now the world feels colder without them in it." For a moment, the studio seemed to stop breathing. Meg Ryan, the woman whose smile had once defined movie love for a generation, looked completely shattered. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I miss him," she said, her words trembling. "I miss my friend. I miss knowing he was out there somewhere, making people laugh, creating light." Her lip quivered. "And I'll never forgive myself for driving away from that gate that day. Never." She paused, her eyes glistening with unspilled tears that caught the dim light. Then, with a steadying breath, she lifted her chin. "But I promise you this," she said, her tone fierce and unwavering. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure people know what really happened, not the gossip, not the headlines, but the truth. The truth about love, about fear, and about the price they paid for both." The rain outside had quieted now, as if even the storm was listening. "Because they weren't just taken away," Meg said, her voice low and raw. "They were betrayed." The words landed like a gut punch, heavy, final. Her tone deepened, thick with grief and something darker. "And betrayal. That's a different kind of loss," she whispered. "It doesn't fade. It lingers. It's the kind of wound that never heals." The room went completely silent. The only sound was the soft hum of the rain outside, tapping against the glass like the world itself was holding its breath. The cameras kept rolling as Meg slowly sank back into her chair, her eyes dropping to the cold mug in front of her, the coffee untouched, the steam long gone. The confession hung in the air like smoke, heavy, suffocating, impossible to ignore. Meg had finally broken the silence, but the echo of what she revealed was louder and sharper than anyone could have imagined. The truth about the Reiner household was out now, raw, unfiltered, devastating, and it hit like a storm crashing through the last walls of Hollywood illusion. The quiet, creeping darkness that had been hiding behind those perfect smiles and red carpet photos was finally exposed. Two of Hollywood's brightest lights had been swallowed by something too dark to name, and Meg's words tore through the facade. showing just how thin the line really is between unconditional love and self-destruction. There was no clean ending, no soft music, no rolling credits. The footage simply faded to black, the final image frozen on Meg's tear-streaked face, her expression a haunting mix of guilt, rage, and heartbreak. That silence at the end said everything. It wrapped around the room like a chill, leaving viewers frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. And then came that one thought, the one that lingered long after the screen went dark. Sometimes the monsters aren't hiding under the bed. Sometimes they're sitting right across the dinner table, smiling, quiet, familiar, while everyone else stays too polite, too scared, or too loyal to say a single word. The aftermath was instant and explosive. The world didn't just react to what Meg said, but how she said it. The illusion of the Reiner family, Hollywood's golden couple, the progressive icons, the success story everyone wanted to believe in, shattered overnight. For years, Rob and Michelle had been the perfect example of how to survive fame with grace, how to stay grounded in a world that chews people up. But with every word that came out of Meg's mouth, that illusion crumbled piece by piece until there was nothing left but the raw, messy truth underneath. On December 17th, Meg took to Instagram with a tribute to the late director and his wife, who had both died just 3 days earlier on December 14th. Within hours, the internet erupted. Social media went up in flames, and news outlets scrambled to keep up. The narrative had shifted overnight from a tragic Hollywood loss to a chilling story of manipulation, loyalty, and betrayal. People weren't whispering anymore, they were demanding answers. Comment sections filled with disbelief, heartbreak, and outrage. Fans who once adored the Reiners now wanted to understand what had really been happening behind those closed doors. But Meg didn't back down. She kept going. In the days that followed, she began releasing more private notes, old journal entries, little fragments she'd been holding onto for years. Each one felt like a piece of evidence, a puzzle finally coming together. She even shared personal emails and text messages, along with handwritten letters from Michelle herself. And every word painted a clearer, more gut-wrenching picture of a family quietly falling apart while the world looked on, none the wiser. One of the first bombshells came from a statement Meg gave directly to Vanity Fair. She wanted her truth printed right, not twisted by gossip sites or clickbait headlines. In that statement, she described a weekend in the Hamptons, 3 years earlier, a celebration for Rob's 75th birthday. It was supposed to be a weekend of love and laughter. But what Meg saw that night would change everything. "We were on the deck," Meg wrote. "The ocean was calm, the candles were lit, and yet there was this tension. You could feel it, like static in the air." That single quote reignited the fire. What was supposed to be a warm, intimate birthday celebration had suddenly become another missing piece of a much darker puzzle. It was the moment the public realized that the cracks in the Reiner family's perfect image had been forming long before anyone saw them. The sun was slipping low over the water, painting the Hamptons sky in shades of gold and pink. Rob stood at the edge of the deck, staring out at the horizon, and Meg never forgot how he looked that evening, smaller somehow, older, like the waves were quietly pulling little pieces of him away. Then he turned to her, eyes heavy with exhaustion and something deeper heartbreak. "Meg," he asked softly, "do you think I failed him?" Her heart broke right there. "He wasn't talking about his career," she said quietly. "He was talking about Nick." Rob confided that Nick had accused him of caring more about his movies than his own family, and that accusation had gutted him. "That one line sliced him open," Meg explained. "That was Nick's favorite weapon, guilt. He knew exactly where to strike." Rob had always wanted to be the good guy, the man who made people smile, the one who fixed things, who made the world lighter. And Nick knew that. He twisted it, turned Rob's kindness against him. "He made Rob feel like his success was a sin," Meg said, her voice shaking. "Like every win, every applause had to be paid for by giving in again and again." Then Meg's tone softened, her eyes clouding with pain. "And Michelle," she said, her voice trembling. Michelle Reiner, this brilliant, creative woman with so much spark, had turned into a ghost of herself. She paused, shaking her head. It was like watching someone slowly fade out of their own life. Her fire was still there, but it was dimming. The scene she described wasn't just a memory. It was the moment she realized that the Reiner family's fairy tale was already breaking apart, one quiet heartbreak at a time. She used to paint the most incredible landscapes, Meg said softly, her voice heavy with memory. Soft, dreamlike scenes that could make you feel calm just by looking at them. For a moment, she smiled sadly, remembering the warmth Michelle once carried everywhere she went. But the last time I visited her studio, she continued, her throat tightening, every canvas was blank, every single one. Her voice trembled as she repeated Michelle's words. She told me, I can't focus anymore. I'm always waiting. Meg's eyes filled with emotion. Waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for the next crisis, the next bail call, the next rehab check-in. Meg sighed deeply, her breath shaking. They were living in constant tension, she said. You could see it in their faces, their skin, even in the way they stood. It was like they were always bracing for something to explode, every single day. Then her tone shifted, hardening with frustration that couldn't hide the sadness beneath it. And let's be real, she said, her voice steady but fierce. We all saw it. Everyone in their circle knew something was wrong. You could feel it at parties, at dinners, even on set, but no one wanted to get involved. No one wanted to cross that line. Meg lowered her gaze, regret flickering across her face. We told ourselves it wasn't our place, she said quietly. We called it privacy. But really, it was avoidance. Her words hung heavy, honest, and raw. For the first time, Meg's story wasn't just exposing the pain inside the Reiner home, it was exposing the silence surrounding it. The silence that let it all keep happening. We all knew, she whispered, her voice breaking. We just didn't want to admit it. Her confession hit like a slap of truth, not just about one family, but about everyone who looked the other way. And as her words spread across every timeline, every feed, Meg's next move stunned everyone she agreed to speak again. This time, not on camera, but on a podcast. A conversation that would take everything even further deeper into the heart of a story no one in Hollywood wanted to touch. Her voice was stronger now, sharpened by anger and guilt that had hardened into fire. The producers, the friends, the people who showed up at every holiday party, we all saw it, she said fiercely, her tone blazing with conviction. We saw Nick's outbursts, the attitude, the way he talked to Rob and Michelle. It wasn't just stress, and it wasn't youthful rebellion, it was control. She paused, taking a breath that trembled with both rage and heartbreak. But Rob, he was always so protective. Her voice tightened as she spoke, heavy with regret. Anytime someone tried to speak up, to suggest maybe Nick needed space or real help, Rob would shut it down fast. He'd say, "You don't understand addiction." But this wasn't just addiction, she said firmly. This was a hostile takeover of a family. Her tone cracked for a brief second before she steadied it again, stronger than ever. And we respected Rob's wishes, she admitted. We stayed quiet. We didn't want to push too hard, didn't want to hurt his pride. So we stood by while they sank deeper and deeper. We let them drown because none of us wanted to offend the captain of the sinking ship. Her words landed like blows, honest, brutal, and drenched in remorse. The host didn't say a word. The silence between them was thick, the kind that made your chest tighten. Then Meg exhaled slowly and dropped the most haunting detail yet, a memory she said she had tried to bury for years. There was this one night, she began softly. It was just me and Nick in the kitchen. Everyone else was outside. She paused, eyes dark with memory. And he was calm, charming even. That's the thing, he could be charming, just like Rob. Her throat tightened as she swallowed hard, the memory burning its way out. He looked right at me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And he said, "You know, Meg, my parents live in a fantasy world." The words hung in the air cold, cutting, dripping with arrogance. In that moment, Meg realized that charm was just his mask, and underneath it was something far more dangerous. They think everything has a happy ending, Meg remembered him saying, her voice trembling as she repeated it. But real life isn't a movie. She paused, exhaling shakily. At the time, I brushed it off. I thought it was just teenage attitude, him trying to sound deep, to get a reaction. Her eyes darkened as she continued. But now, looking back, I see it for what it really was. It wasn't cynicism. It was a warning. Her voice lowered, heavy with realization. He was telling me in his own twisted way that he was going to be the one to break their illusion. the plot twist they never saw coming. The room fell dead silent. You could almost hear the weight of it, the shock, the guilt, the understanding that the signs had been there all along. They'd just been buried under charm, denial, and wishful thinking. Now, with the January 7th trial date approaching fast, Meg's voice wasn't just echoing through podcasts and interviews, it was echoing through courtrooms, through headlines, through every corner of an industry built on appearances. Her truth had become the story no one could ignore. When a reporter asked if she was afraid to keep speaking out, she didn't hesitate. Her tone was sharp, almost defiant. "He took the people I loved," she said simply. "He has nothing left to take from me." That single line hit like lightning, cold, final, unforgettable. It wasn't anger anymore, it was resolve. The fear that once lingered in her voice had vanished. What was left was purpose, the kind that burns quiet but steady. In the weeks after the interview, Meg began turning that pain into action. She announced the creation of a foundation in Rob and Michelle Reiner's name, one dedicated to helping older parents who suffer abuse, manipulation, or financial control from their adult children. It was bold, unexpected, and powerful, her way of rewriting the ending that real life had stolen. Meg wasn't just speaking anymore. She was fighting, making sure the tragedy that destroyed the Reiners wouldn't destroy anyone else again. "It's a silent epidemic," Meg said in one interview, her tone steady but heavy with truth. And Rob, without even realizing it, became the face of it. She took a breath, her eyes distant. He loved so fiercely that he couldn't see the harm closing in around him. Her words cut deep, revealing the tragedy beneath the surface of what the world once saw as a picture-perfect family. Then came her most haunting revelation yet. "I went to the house yesterday," she told a reporter quietly, her voice hollow and distant. "The police tape is gone, but the house feels dead." She paused, searching for words that couldn't fully describe the emptiness. That home used to be alive, full of music, the smell of garlic and tomatoes in the kitchen, laughter bouncing off the walls. She swallowed hard. Now it's just a cold, empty shell sitting in Brentwood. Her eyes welled up as she continued, her voice trembling. "I walked into Rob's study. His glasses were still there, sitting right on the desk. The script he'd been reading was open to page 42. It felt like time had just stopped. Everything was frozen." Her words painted the silence of that room so vividly you could almost feel it. Then her tone softened, almost breaking. "I sat down in his chair," she said quietly, "and I made him a promise." She took a long, shaky breath. "I told him the story wouldn't end with what happened to him and Michelle. It would end with the truth, the raw, uncomfortable truth he was too gentle to ever say out loud." That promise became the heartbeat of Meg's new mission, a vow to speak where silence had once protected the pain. The impact of her breaking that silence wasn't about sensational headlines or Hollywood drama. It was something deeper, something raw. Her voice didn't just expose tragedy, it stripped away the gloss, the fame, the camera flashes, and showed what was left underneath. The quiet heartbreak of a family that collapsed from the inside. The kind of pain that doesn't make the tabloids but never really leaves you. This wasn't just another Hollywood tragedy, it was something painfully human. It made people stop scrolling, stop gossiping, and start thinking. Thinking about their own homes, their own secrets, their own unspoken wounds, the hurts that hide behind closed doors and polite smiles. Meg's confession turned the story of Rob and Michelle Reiner into a mirror, forcing society to look at itself and face how love, loyalty, and silence can collide in dangerously destructive ways. It wasn't about sirens, fame, or scandal anymore. It was about the quiet kind of damage that festers behind wealth, charm, and everything's fine. The kind of pain that no one posts about, but everyone recognizes when they see it. By the end, the woman who once defined movie romance had transformed right in front of everyone's eyes. Meg Ryan, the eternal girl next door, had grown up. And in doing so, she made the whole world grow up with her. She forced people to face the darkness that no camera, no script, and no amount of movie magic could ever edit out. In the weeks that followed her foundation announcement, the story refused to die down. Every major outlet wanted her morning shows, late-night interviews, magazine covers, documentaries. Everyone wanted a piece of Meg Ryan's truth. But this time, she wasn't chasing fame. She was chasing purpose. On camera, she appeared calm and composed, her voice steady, her posture strong, but you could still see the grief flicker behind her eyes. When one host asked what kept her going, she didn't hesitate. "This isn't about Hollywood anymore," she said firmly. "It's about how silence protects the wrong people." That line hit deep, not as a celebrity soundbite, but as a call to action. Within days, donations began pouring in from across the country. Letters, messages, voicemails, thousands of them. People sharing stories that sounded heartbreakingly familiar. Elderly parents being manipulated by their own adult children, too scared to speak up out of love, shame, or guilt. Each message carried the same ache proof that what happened to Rob and Michelle wasn't rare, just rarely talked about. And now, because Meg refused to stay silent, people everywhere were finally starting to speak. The silence was breaking, and this time, the whole world was listening. Meg read every single one. Every story, she said, felt like deja vu, like I'm reading echoes of what Rob and Michelle lived through. The foundation, named the Reiner Project, had become far more than a charity. It was a movement. Meg didn't just lend her name to it, she built it from the ground up. She teamed up with lawyers, psychologists, and advocates people who had seen the same kind of pain behind closed doors to push for real legislative change. Laws that would finally protect vulnerable parents from financial and emotional abuse, no matter where it came from. At a packed press conference, Meg stood tall behind the podium, her voice steady and fierce. "We need to start seeing this for what it is," she declared. "Not family drama, not private business. Abuse is abuse no matter who's holding the checkbook." The crowd erupted in applause, cameras flashing, the room buzzing with energy. But behind that fierce resolve, you could see the toll it was taking on her. Every public appearance seemed to drain her just a little more. It was as if she was holding her grief together by sheer willpower, refusing to let it break her down in front of the world. Observers noticed small things too, like how she always wore Rob's old silver bracelet on her wrist, a quiet symbol of the bond she refused to let go of. Then, on the eve of the trial, Meg released a statement that lit the internet on fire all over again. It wasn't polished or PR approved, just a simple, handwritten note she posted online without warning. The ink slightly smudged, the words heartbreakingly human. "Tomorrow isn't about revenge," she wrote. "It's about accountability. Rob and Michelle believed in redemption. I believe in truth, and truth is the only way we honor them." Within hours, the message went viral. Social media flooded with tributes clips from Rob's iconic films, fans quoting The Princess Bride and When Harry Met Sally, their captions echoing the same heartbreak. Memes, fan art, and candlelit vigils spread across timelines. The world wasn't just mourning a director and his wife anymore, it was mourning what their story revealed about love, loyalty, and the silence that costs too much. "As you wish, Rob." Those 4 words flooded social media feeds, handwritten across tributes and captions, a bittersweet goodbye that made the whole world stop for a moment. It felt like Hollywood itself had paused to breathe, united in grief, reflection, and heartbreak. But while the tributes poured in, whispers about the upcoming trial grew louder. Would Meg take the stand? Could she handle it? Some insiders said she was ready, unshakable. Others insisted she shouldn't, that she had already done enough. Everyone agreed on one thing, though. If Meg Ryan spoke in that courtroom, her words could change everything. After all, her voice had already rewritten how the world saw the Reiner family story. The night before the court date, a photographer caught Meg walking alone on the beach in Malibu. The wind was wild, pulling her hair across her face as she stared out at the dark water. The image went viral, a quiet portrait of grief and strength. Maybe she was remembering that final conversation with Rob. Or maybe she was whispering one last promise to him. When asked later what she'd been thinking in that moment, her answer was simple, soft, and devastating. "I was thinking that love should never cost someone their peace," she said. "And I was thinking that if Rob were still here, he'd tell me to keep fighting." By then, the storm that started in Brentwood had grown into something much larger, a national reckoning. It wasn't just about the Reiners anymore. It was about every family suffering behind closed doors, every secret buried under love and loyalty. Meg Ryan had turned tragedy into testimony, pain into purpose, and loss into a warning for anyone still living in silence. And then came the morning of the trial. The sky was a dull, heavy gray, the kind that seemed to hold its breath. Outside the courthouse, the air buzzed with tension. Reporters crowded the steps, microphones ready, cameras flashing. Inside, families, advocates, and Hollywood insiders waited for the woman who had shaken the industry to its core. Meg Ryan wasn't just walking into court, she was walking straight into history. Reporters crowded the courthouse steps, cameras flashing like lightning as Meg Ryan stepped out of a sleek black SUV. She wore a simple black suit, no glam, no statement jewelry, just quiet strength. Her hair was pulled back, her face calm but unreadable. She didn't wave, didn't smile. She just walked forward, steady, silent, and resolute, flanked by her legal team on both sides. Inside, the courtroom was already packed to the brim. Spectators whispered. Journalists scribbled furiously in their notebooks. Even the judge seemed to grasp that this wasn't just another Hollywood scandal playing out, this was history. When Meg took her seat, every head turned. For a fleeting moment, she looked like the movie star everyone remembered, the charming smile, the soft composure, the woman who once defined on-screen love. But then she lifted her chin, and it was clear she wasn't here to perform. She was here to tell the truth. When her name was called to the stand, she stood tall, walked with quiet confidence, and took the oath. The entire room held its breath. Then, in a voice that didn't tremble, she began. "I knew Rob Reiner for over 30 years, she said clearly, and I loved him like family." The courtroom went still. You could almost hear hearts breaking in the silence. "He wasn't just a filmmaker," she continued. "He was the most compassionate man I'd ever known. But compassion can become dangerous when it blinds you." The words hit hard, sharp, and deliberate. As she spoke, cameras caught flashes of emotion crossing her face: pain, anger, guilt, disbelief. She told them everything. The phone calls, the warnings, the moments she tried to intervene, and the times she'd stayed quiet. She didn't sugarcoat a thing. Her voice was steady, almost haunting in its honesty. "We all saw it," she said plainly. "We all knew something was wrong, and we all did nothing, including me." Her confession hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore. It wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't dramatic, it was real, and that made it hit even harder. In that moment, Meg Ryan wasn't just an actress or a witness, she was the voice of everyone who'd ever stayed silent out of love and lived to regret it. That admission hit the courtroom like thunder, heavy, shocking, and impossible to ignore. Even the defense team looked visibly shaken. Meg took a steadying breath and kept going, her voice low but powerful. "Nick wasn't a lost boy," she said firmly. "He was in control. He used guilt as a tool, pity as a weapon. He played on love like it was a game one he knew he could win." Her words shattered the air like glass breaking. The tension rippled through the room, sharp and electric. "Rob once told me," she continued softly, "if I just love him harder, maybe it'll save him." She paused, her voice catching for a brief second. But love doesn't save everyone. Sometimes it hides the truth. When she finished, there was no applause, no sound, just a deep, weighted silence that settled over the courtroom like a storm cloud. Even the judge seemed to hesitate before speaking, as if the gravity of her words needed time to sink in. Meg's testimony didn't feel like a piece of legal evidence. It felt like a reckoning, raw, emotional, and final. As she stepped down from the stand, she didn't look back at Nick. She didn't need to. Whatever once existed between them, the family ties, the guilt, the heartbreak, it was gone. It ended right there in that courtroom. Outside, chaos erupted the second she stepped through the doors. Reporters shouted her name, cameras flashed like fireworks, and the crowd surged forward trying to catch a glimpse. But Meg didn't stop. She kept walking, calm and quiet, and slipped into the waiting car. The door shut, and in an instant, she vanished behind the tinted glass. That night, every major network replayed her testimony on loop. News anchors dissected every word. Social media lit up hashtags trending worldwide, clips going viral within minutes. People called her brave, raw, fearless. But Meg didn't post a single thing. No statements, no reactions, nothing. Sources close to her said she went home, fed her dog, and sat quietly by the window for hours, just staring at the rain. No spotlight, no headlines. Just silence, the kind that says everything words can't. Because no matter how powerful her testimony was, it didn't bring them back. And Meg knew that. She knew that truth, as powerful as it can be, doesn't heal. It doesn't erase pain. It just keeps the darkness from being buried again. And that's where this story leaves us raw, haunting, unforgettable. Meg Ryan didn't just reopen an old Hollywood wound. She made the world finally look at the truth hiding behind the fame. Her courage turned silence into power, and her pain became a voice for every person who never got the chance to speak up. This wasn't just a story about Hollywood, it was a mirror, showing what happens when love, fear, and silence mix into something deadly. And Meg, she broke that silence for good. If this story hit you hard, if it made you stop and think about what really goes on behind closed doors, don't just scroll away. Keep this conversation alive. Tap that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on Watch Daily notifications so you never miss another deep dive into the hidden corners of fame, power, and the stories Hollywood doesn't want you to hear. Drop your thoughts in the comments, tell us. What part of Meg's truth hit you the hardest? Was it the moment she faced Nick in court? Or the silence she carried for years before speaking out? And if you believe more people need to hear this, share this video with your friends, your group chats, anyone who's ever believed that love alone can fix what's broken. Because the more we talk about it, the less power silence holds. This is FameWatch Daily, where we bring you the stories that matter, the ones that shake the walls of Hollywood and pull the truth out from behind the spotlight. Don't look away now. Keep the truth loud, keep the light on, and remember, every story deserves to be heard. Like, subscribe, and keep watching FameWatch Daily for more.